What do you get when an order comes through your reverb shop and you're on your fourth or fifth rewatch of Metalocalypse? Fantastic show, by the way. Brandon, you're a genius. And if you ever come upon this video, free guitar on me. But yeah, an order comes through and it says, hey, can you make me a black bass body, but do it in such a way that the grain is peeking through, like those sandblasted finishes that you always see that are really metal and really brutal. And you don't really have a sandblaster, so you can't make that feasibly happen in your shop, but ash is still a pretty porous wood, and so you can probably still kind of make it work, and the client is cool with that. You get Brutal Black. And welcome back to MadLad Instruments, everybody. Guys, gals, and non-binary pals, welcome back. My name is Drew. I build guitars and basses in my garage. I bring you along for the shenanigans, and today we are building something truly brutal. And I legitimately thought about doing this entire video with a Metalocalypse impersonation or impression, but my Nathan Explosion one's pretty solid. I can do Pickles easily enough because that's just like a Midwestern accent, but Toki and Squizgar is where it kind of gets tricky. So maybe some Metalocalypse impressions will come in throughout the video, but hashtag not sponsored. I just really like Metalocalypse, and it just so happened that this order came through, and so we are calling this Brutal Black. And I think it'll actually open up the doorway to a lot of different finishes as well, because black is obviously one color, but you could do gold, you could do really any color where you want the grain to peek through. So I think this is going to be kind of a motif or a new kind of finish that I offer. And you know how I am. I'm going to bring you guys along for the process, and we're going to check out how this body came to be. We're going to be doing a satin kind of matte finish over the top, so it's going to have a nice brutal black and grain line kind of look, but also have that nice smoky kind of top coat. I'm really stoked. So without further ado, let's jump in and take a look at the body that we're going to be working with and see if we can't make something really brutal. Alrighty, so here's our body for today. Gorgeous two-piece Northern Ash body. Y'all already know the deal. I've sanded this up to 220. There was a slight little knot here with a little bit of a crack, and so I've since stabilized it, and I hit it with a little bit of black grain filler. Obviously, since it's going to be all black, this isn't going to show through. So we're going to get that sanded down. There's a little bit of touch up that I have to do here around the bouts as well. This is currently up to 320. We're going to sand it up, or I'm sorry, at 220. And then we're going to sand it up to 320. But what I'm really hoping for, and what I've seen with ash plenty time and time again, is even though it feels smooth to the touch right here, when you go over those grain veins or those grain lines, there's just a little bit of lip to them. And so I'm thinking they're primed, poised, and ready to take on a little bit of finish. And I will show you what finish we're going to be using first, but we're going to go ahead and get these touched up. So let's hit a time lapse on that. Alrighty, we are touched up, 320, looking nice, feeling nice, looking nice, feeling nice, looking nice, feeling nice. A little bit of repetition there for you. So, how are we going to do this finish? A little bit of a change up. And if you've watched any of my previous finishing videos, you know that there's usually some color mixing involved. We use varathane or some sort of spray-on poly. Today's a little bit different. And before we get into that, let me give you guys a little bit of context about the different types of finishes there are. You have top coats or top finishes, which are basically finishes and chemicals that sit on top of the wood and form kind of a hard shell around the body. You may have heard me use the analogy like an M&M shell. You know, you have the candy shell around the edge. Those are top mounting finishes or top finishes. There's another type of finish, what's called a penetrating finish or a penetrating stain, if it's like oil-based. What that means is rather than pulling on the top and creating layers on the top, the wood actually penetrates into the oil and fills the pores, and that's how you get the color. You'll almost always have to pair this up with some sort of top coat, because as the wood is penetrated and stuff like that, you still have bare wood here on the top. It doesn't have anything protecting it, and so it's more likely to ding up and
even sometimes leave color. So like if you were to sit down on a chair with this in it, you probably pick up a little bit of the color because you're sitting on the wood. All of that stain inside of there is kind of pulling up, and it's like a sponge. When you compress a sponge, all the color comes out. So we're gonna need something to put on top of this. And for that, the rattle can special is back. I have some Rusto Satin Clear. This is just a can that was sitting in my drawer. Yes, there are some differences between matte and satin. Typically, the order of shininess goes glossy. Glossy is the most shiny. Semi-gloss, satin, and then matte. But for my eyes, and from a stylistic standpoint, matte and satin are really hard to tell apart. And if you put enough coats of this down, the kind of glossiness of the satin becomes more muted and it becomes more of a matte color. So this should work for our purposes, and this will sit on top. Now, in the past, I've told you to always mix like bases. This is an oil-based penetrating finish. This, to my knowledge, is a water-based, unless I have to double check it. But with that in mind, you may be like, Drew, we're mixing unlike bases. How's that gonna work out? To be totally honest with you, I'm not quite sure. And if it blows up in our faces, we'll figure it out then. But I'm willing to bet, based on my experience, that because this is penetrating into the wood, whatever we put on top of the wood should be all right. So we should be able to put down a couple coats of this on top, still get the effect we want, still get the protection that we need to keep this, the color and the stain inside the wood, and we'll have a good old time. So, how we're gonna put this on? Keeping it real low tech. You guys know that I like to keep it low tech because I know a lot of you guys out there, you may be finishing your first body, and I'm not calling you low tech or anything like that, but I really like to illustrate that you can do a lot of really great finishes without a whole lot of equipment. I do have an HVLP set up, and I do have a proper like spray booth and stuff like that, but you can easily do some really good stuff with your first build or your first couple builds just by getting stuff off the shelf, and that's what we're going to be doing today. With that, I just have some shop rags here. Ideally, you can use some cloth rags. Cloth rags, because they're made of fibers, won't leave behind little dusty bits. I'm willing to bet if we pull this up with enough finish that little blue dusty bits are going to come off, but I'm just going to clean those off, so not to worry. So if you don't have cloth lying around, shop towels should work. I've never really done it with regular kitchen paper towels, but I'm willing to bet because these are a little bit thicker and a little bit more durable that they probably work a little bit better. The thinner ones, the more kitchen-based ones, might be a little more prone to flaking out on you. So use with caution, but if you're going to be using the same one that I do, just use these regular blue shop towels you can get at your local hardware store. And it's really just as easy as we crack this can open. We're going to shake it a little bit. We're going to dab it up with our cloth and then just start working over it. So let me get this all set up. I'm going to open this can and we'll be back for a little bit of a yap and putting down some color. Little caveat, the instructions on the back of this said to not mix it up, so I think I did a little bit of mixing, but I've since stopped. So some will say, some will not. I tell you guys with every single video, read the instructions multiple times just to make sure that you're good. And I also have some nitrile gloves on because every little finish is a little bit different in how it's applied, and also these gloves help to keep it off your hands. And I also have my lab coat on here, just making sure that I don't get any of it on my cloth. Little tip, you have a little bit of stain here on the lid usually, so you can just grab some of that and then test it just to make sure it's gonna look good. And already, look at that, we already have like the wood grain peeking out, so we know that it's gonna be fantastic. So let's go ahead and just get into it. I'm gonna get a little bit reaching down in here. Honestly, that might cover the whole guitar. Let's see. It doesn't take a lot. Minwax formulates their stuff very, very carefully so you get maximum coverage. I'm a big fan of Minwax's stains. Also check your labels for instructions on respirators. I can already tell that this is a very unctuous finish, and some of them can have chemicals that are a little bit harmful, so you want to make sure that you're always working in a ventilated space and following whatever safety directions they have on the side of the can. I want you to be safe. I want you to be here building guitars for a good long while. And so with that, we can follow some instructions. Another thing I like to do when you have these really dark areas that you know have coverage, there's still probably a little bit of finish there, so you can just kind of pull it out. So come over here, bring it over here. Man, this is looking fantastic already. I hope the camera's catching it, but just the grain peeking through there, it's going to be exactly what we need. And what are we going to yap about today? I was thinking about a couple different things we could talk about. I have been watching a lot of Queso videos lately. In case you guys don't know Queso, he's a streamer. Real funny. I just watched his water park simulator playthrough, and now I'm working through his supermarket simulator playthrough. So, a man that needs no introduction, but if you are interested in streams and funny streamers, he gets my vote. The other thing that I was going to talk about was, or we were talking about Metalocalypse earlier, and I had this thought that my sibling, who's also a very big K-pop fan, was mentioning that, oh yeah, Metalocalypse is the show, they're watching it with their boyfriend, a good guy named Colin. Love you, bro. We do kendo together, and that's how they met. Really sweet story. But Colin introduced my sibling to Metalocalypse, and they were watching through it. And the whole premise, or my sibling was explaining it to my dad. It's like the whole premise is there's this metal band that is like so popular that it has like global geopolitical influence. And then they were like, that's just BTS. So yeah, I'm also a big K-pop fan. I don't know if I call myself a K-pop stan, but I'm a K-pop fan. And it hadn't occurred to me, but apparently 3% of South Korea's GDP is BTS. Just like BTS merch, BTS tickets, everything BTS. Truly a super group. And with new acts like K-pop Demon Hunters coming out and Huntrix and everything, been loving that as well. But it got me thinking that K-pop fans, K-pop stans, if you will, have kind of been the butt of jokes for a lot of people on the internet. And granted, I don't have a whole lot of experience, interacting with very rabid fans, and I understand that there are some people that don't make the healthiest decisions, or, could do with a little bit of expectation setting regarding parasocial relationships. But to me, I think they're usually the butt of jokes by like other communities, like really gatekeeping communities. The metal community is kind of an example. I'm really thankful for bands like Freedom Call, who make songs like Metal is for Everyone, reminding the metal genre that metal is for everybody. There's the classic joke of the boomer who sees a young girl or a young guy, a young lad, a young lass, if you will, who has a Nirvana shirt on or a Metallica shirt on. And they're like, oh, you like Metallica? Name 3 songs or name 3 albums. And it's just like, why do we have to gatekeep, bud? And then there was the backlash on, I think, like Khloe Kardashian or Kourtney Kardashian or somebody who was wearing a Slayer shirt. And it's like, it's a cool shirt. Slayer's really metal. They got like a really good shirt. And I don't know like how the artists react to it, but like, there's a couple different ways you can look at it. As an entrepreneur myself, I'm just like, okay, that's a lot of free marketing. I'm gonna expect like a lot of t-shirt sales. This is great. I'm not gonna gatekeep somebody for helping me get my bag. But others, I get the feeling, or another way to look at it is just like, if you're an artist, you have every right to use your platform to speak out about people that, are wearing your shirts or like, using your music and stuff like that. There's obviously the argument for a lot of bands haven't wanted like political candidates to use their songs at rallies and stuff like that because they're like, hey, we don't align with your views politically and we prefer our art not be alongside you. That's completely different. But for the other 90 to 95% of situations where you have, a really grouchy old person, or maybe not even old person, sometimes it's really young people, at some point there was a lot of gatekeeping in the industry or, in these various scenes. But I'm so thankful that I'm coming up, or, I get to interact with the Dallas music scene because everyone around here is fantastic. I've got friends in Set Adrift, Moonstone, Waiting for April, Golden Week, all very fantastic bands that are playing local circuits right now. And the community has been nothing but welcoming and chill, and I've always had great times. Lady Winters is another really great act that I've seen. Fantastic vocals and really chill, kind of cozy vibes. So I think the next generation, or, the next crop of artists, or everybody that I've interacted with, have been super duper non-gatekeepy and super duper welcoming, and that gives me hope. But I also understand that back in the day, and maybe some of you guys, some of you elder emos or elder metalheads can give me some perspective here, but there used to be a lot more gatekeeping and like, hey bro, you're not metal enough to come to this show. And it's just like, that's completely unnecessary in this day and age. Like, music is for everybody, art is for everybody. Don't use it to purport like hate in a way that the artist, you know, definitely wouldn't agree with. And don't use hate, or don't use music as a medium to spread hate, because music is art and art shouldn't be made to hate things. But yeah, maybe we can stop with the gatekeeping. Maybe the K-pop stands and the Swifties and the metalheads and all of us can just come together and appreciate some really good music from different artists. And like, plenty of artists have collabed across genre lines already. And so why can't we do that as fans? So I guess this is your reminder today to just be thankful for all the artists that you listen to. Be welcoming. Show somebody new, a new act that you really, really like or something like that. For heaven's sakes, let's just all be a little bit more accepting, a little bit more nurturing, especially for younger people coming into the scene. I take a lot of pride as an elder emo myself, having gone to a number of shows, that, you know, I am here to protect the next generation. Or like, you know, if there's a youngin' or a young lad who is, or a young lass or a young they who is wandering a little close to the mosh and they don't know the etiquette of mosh, or, you know, they don't realize that they're walking into a war zone, maybe I should, you know, put myself between them and make sure that they're okay and checking in on stuff. Not in a creepy way either, but I also went to a show not too long ago. My buddies in Set Adrift were playing, but there was a band called Unbroken Rain, which was fantastic. It's a group of teenage guys and gals, non-binary pals, who make a lot of songs about Jesus, which is really, really rad. And they were younger, but like their friends were showing out, and it was really cool to see like young people at shows and, you know, young mingling next to old, and, you know, it seemed like a pretty welcome environment. But I thought it was just really, really rad that there's like this group of high schoolers that are, you know, making metal about Jesus, and their friends show out, because we all have been to shows where, you know, like, oh man, I'll come see your show, but then at the last minute they're like, oh man, something fell through, or, you know, I can't make it tonight, and that's always a bummer. So yeah, buddy. Alrighty, so go show a new friend or somebody new some new music today. And I think that's good. It's a little blotchy because some parts of the finish are going to be permeating while others are kind of dry. I'm going to give this about, what does it say on the instructions? 2 hours to darken, color, recode after 2 hours. Okay, so we'll give it 2 hours to see where we're at. As you can see already, this is what I was talking about. Real blotchy. The color is just going to be kind of equalizing, and there's still probably a lot on the top. So we're going to wrap this to make sure that the stain doesn't get everywhere. I'm also going to take a snap of this and send it on over to Charlie. Charlie is my client who ordered this. I forgot to mention earlier. It reminds me of that scene in Forrest Gump where he's like going off to Vietnam, and he's like, we were looking for a guy named Charlie. And I wonder if Forrest ever found Charlie. Obviously a joke about Charlie being in Viet Cong. So with that in mind, I'll send it on over to Charlie and see what he thinks. And I will meet you guys once we put down our second coat and we're getting ready to do top coat. So don't go nowhere. Alrighty, here we are. Beautiful, beautiful afternoon here in McKinney, Texas. The weather is turning around and the sneezes are aplenty because of all the pollen. So trusty tack cloth, if you guys have seen me do my finish videos before, you know this guy is our trusty tack cloth, and it's probably time to retire this fella. He's getting a little grungy, but just wiping over, getting these last little bits of dust and flecks off. Very, very handy tool whenever you're doing finishing. And this body has been allowed to sit for about 48 hours. Excuse the sniffling. And these grain lines are really, really pronounced. Really loving how that came out. So we're going to get into doing top coat, as I promised. Another rattle can special, Rusto rattle can special. And we've got satin clear here. And if you guys have seen me do any of my other rattle can finishes, then you know that we just go over. First coat's going to be a little light. We're looking for 50% overlap, so I'm just going to pass over the body top to bottom, overlapping about 50%.
We're going to do our first coat real light. That's called a tack cloth. It basically gives the rest of the finish something to grab onto. And believe me, there's plenty to grab on here with all these grain lines and stuff like that. But it should even out a little bit. It looks like there's some streak lines because we did apply this with, you know, a cloth. So there's going to be a couple streak lines, but I think this is going to get in and kind of level everything out, rehydrate those pores, and probably get rid of those streak lines. So as far as personal safety goes, make sure that you're working in a well-ventilated area. The instructions recommend an open garage, which is what we got going on right here. Read your instructions, read them twice, 3 times. Make sure you especially pay attention to the safety side of things, because I want you to be making guitars for a long time, not for a short time. So protect your lungs, make sure that you're taking precautions. I have my respirator that I'm going to throw on here in just a second. And we are going to get this going. So super duper simple. We're just going to go until I run out of coats. I imagine this is about halfway full. So we'll probably get about a good 3-4 coats out of it. And without further ado, let's do that time lapse.
Well, that's not good.
Yeah, so I was shaking this up and the rattler works just fine. But one thing I noticed is that when I took the top off and I started shaking, there's a little bit of liquid that was coming out, and then there's some pooling. You can see it right there. So yeah, I'm willing to bet this sprung a leak at some point and all the aerosol kicked out of it. So unfortunately, we're gonna have to dispose of this and go get us a new can. So one trip to the hardware store later, and alrighty, once more with feeling and once more with a stomach full of shrimp Thai basil fried rice. Shout outs to Red Hot Indochina Kitchen in McKinney, Texas. They make a great shrimp fried rice, and it is Lent, so that's the deal. We got a new can of Rusto Magic Matte Clear. And remember all that stuff we said earlier about satin and doing more coats of satin to get a matte finish? We don't have to worry about that anymore. So we're just going to, I think we'll have to spray a fewer coats on this one. I'm still hoping to get 5 or 6 coats out of this, and we've got a whole can, so we can have a lot more fun with it. Still got the respirator up there. Going to toss that on, and let's make this happen. Alrighty, and this is a wrap, and this is probably one of the better finishes that I've done in recent memory. So matte finishes, I love them to death. They're super duper easy. If you are ever talking to your luthier and say, hey, I want a matte finish, just know that they are exhaling deep exhales of joy, because there's just so much less that you have to do. You don't have to level sand, and you get this amazing finish with all these beautiful grain lines. This is, I mean, we started out wanting to make it absolutely brutal, but it actually turned out pretty beautiful, I would say, too. I think that's a word for somebody. You know, sometimes something could be simple and brutal, but also beautiful. It's kind of like when a butterfly, or like when a caterpillar is trying to become a butterfly, and then it wraps itself in like armor or a straitjacket of its own creation, and it sits there for days and days and days, but then it sprouts out and breaks out of it in utter savagery, and then it can fly. That's pretty brutal, but also pretty beautiful. So shouts to Nathan Explosion. Leave a review for my Nathan Explosion impression down in the comments. But really stoked to get this sent out. This opens up a lot of avenues, because Brutal Black is an option, but also Brutal White, Brutal Gold. You could do just about any of these open grain fills or open grain finishes, and they look absolutely fantastic, and they're very chic right now. So just goes to show you, very simple. This video didn't take nearly as long as some of my other finishing videos. I don't know what the time step's going to be until I actually edit it, but I can tell you that this is going to be worlds easier. And yeah, amazing finish from not a whole lot of tech. It was a rattle can and a can of stain that you can get at the hardware store. So I'm going to get this wrapped up and boxed up, and we're going to wrap up this video in the normal way, and that is by me saying, always remember, friends, that you are wanted, you are loved, and you are appreciated. You have a special talent that nobody else has, and the world is waiting on you to bring it out. So muster a little courage, go out into the world, and change it. That's what the world's waiting on. You. Till next time, friends, be good to one another, and we'll see you in the next one. God bless.